chair shall calls up the matter of pending business. The chair lays out Senate Bill 781. Members, are there any questions to Senator King? 781.
Yeah,
Senator King.
be happy to kind of walk through it again. Members, this is a bill we heard previously, and I really appreciated the dialogue and testimony about it. Actually, we were going to wait for the House bill to come over, but it died an untimely death a couple of days ago on a point of order that was unrelated to the substance of the bill, and so we're trying to move the Senate bill over there for him. If you remember, this dealt with the file management for law enforcement. There was a TCOL work group that met for a long period of time, both made up of law enforcement and non-law enforcement personnel. They came up with a model policy. The policy is already in effect voluntarily in governing over 20,000 officers' files in Texas. Every city that's under state civil service, it's a matter of law with them already. That would include Fort Worth, Plano, Corpus Christi, Wichita Falls, and Austin, Waco, Lubbock, Amarillo, Houston, and a host of other cities that are already under this. This just makes it consistent across the state in how those policies are handled. This version of the bill passed out of Homeland Security in the House 10-0, and again, it was on the calendar, and when it got to the floor, it just got bumped by a point of order, and so we're just trying to move it from there. Be happy to answer any questions about it.
Senator Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator King, this is the same bill that you and I discussed, that the files, if not found to be proven guilty, the files, everything's removed and they're sealed, right?
Yeah, essentially, it's you end up with, like in Houston, the way they do it today. You have two personnel files. One has all the public information that can be on an officer. The other one would contain the background information from when they were going through employment application. If they have been found to have, if they were formally disciplined for some action, that would be in the public file. If they were accused of an allegation and exonerated for that allegation, then that would be in the sealed file. So it just basically separates what's available to the public and what's not. For example, right now in many communities on an open records request or other request, you could get the officer's home address and things like that. So what's private is set up as private, and what's public is set up as public. It doesn't create any issues with any of our due process for criminal cases when they're trying to find out an officer's record. That is still discoverable under the Code of Criminal Procedure.
I understand that. But my problem still remains on this, is that those sealed files, we can't tell the propensity and the mindset and the capability of the officers, which we always thought was important. I always thought was important. And some jurors have found that that information is important as well. So for that reason, you can understand I won't be voting for the bill. Brother.
I understand completely. I think and your point is well taken, but I think where the confusion sometimes comes in is if you were to send an open records request, a Freedom of Information Act request regarding an officer under this, or in Houston, because it's in practice today, if they had been accused of maybe drinking on duty or of assaulting someone or improper arrest or something, and had been exonerated, then that would not be released.
That's correct.
However, if there was a criminal case and it was dealing with the officer or a Michael Morton type situation, the defense for that person could still get those files for that criminal process. And so whereas the general public could not get those files, but if it is in a criminal court, those files would be available to the defense, and then the defense could try to build that case. Well, look, he's been or she's been accused of overreacting in situations 3 times previously, and they could that could be brought into the court at that time.
In the same tone, if we have a hot-headed officer or an officer that can't control his temper, it would go into that file, and no one would have access to that file. And when he transferred to another agency, that file wouldn't transfer with him, correct?
No, it actually could.
How could it?
Because under other legislation that we've previously set up to try to deal with passing bad officers from agency to agency, all of the
But
information.
in that file
is
as
now
well,
available.
if my mind hasn't left me, in that file as well, if they haven't been found to be guilty of those charges or allegations, that file is not put into that file.
I believe their full personnel record is available
Yeah.
from if
official.
an applying agency requests.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. It is confusing, and I understand the concerns.
Any further questions, Senator?
Well, last statement, police officer to police officer, we know that this is how some of our not so respectful officers slide from department to department to department because that information is not let out to them.
And I think it was Senator Huffman's legislation last session that really tried to make sure that all that information, and I used to do that. I used to do background checks. I spent a couple of years doing that at the academy, and it would frustrate me at the time. I would call another agency and I would say, hey, we've got so-and-so used to work for you. They've applied for a position with us and want to find out some questions about their background. And sometimes they had entered into an agreement, hey, if you'll resign, we'll seal your file.
Correct.
Or they would be worried about litigation or something like that. So they just would say, look, I'm sorry, our policy is we just don't release that. And it was a real problem. And I'd get around it a lot of times. I'd just start calling random officers that they'd worked with and find out what happened. But you couldn't get formal things. And so the legislation that Senator Huffman passed last session or the session before that maybe, was designed to make sure that those files were fully available to any other agency that was inquiring.
We can call for the bill.
In fact, she just informed me they're actually required to look at it. Yeah.
We can call for the vote.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Chair moves that Senate Bill 781 do not pass, but that the committee substitute for Senate Bill 781 adopted in lieu thereof be reported to the full Senate with a recommendation do pass favorably and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Flores.
Aye.
Vice Chair Parker.
Aye.
Senator Hinojosa.
Aye.
Senator Huffman.
Aye.
Senator Miles.
Nay.
Senator King.
Aye.
Senator Hagenbu.
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
There be 6 ayes, 1 nay. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 781 will be reported to the full Senate with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Members, thank you all very much for being here. That concludes the committee's business.